On Monday, May 26, 1828, a young man appeared in the market square in Nuremberg. He didn't attack 39, T know who he was. He didn't attack 39, T know where he attack 39 D come from. He could barely stand. He was carrying 2 letters. One said he had been born on April 30th, 1812. The other claimed that since birth he had lived in total captivity, never seeing sunlight, never speaking with anyone. The neighbours who found him took him to the police. The police didn't and hashtag 39 T know what to do with him, and neither did all of Europe. For the next 5 years, Kaspar Hauser became the greatest mystery in 19th century Europe. Philosophers, criminologists, nobles and kings became obsessed with a single question. Who was he really? In 2024, nearly 200 years after his appearance, a team of scientists from the universities of Innsbruck and Leicester believed they finally had an answer. They did. But it wasn't hashtag 39, the one anyone expected. Act 1. The appearance to understand what Kaspar Hauser and hashtag 39's dinar means, you first need to know the story Europe built around him. A young man, approximately 16 years old, worn clothing, a wide-brimmed hat. In his hand, an envelope with 2 anonymous letters. The first letter said he was the son of a poor labourer, that he had lived with the letter and hashtag 39 sender since birth, that he had never gone outside, and that he was now being sent into the world to become a cavalry soldier. The second letter, supposedly written by his mother, said his name was Kaspar, that he had been born on April 30th, 1812, and that his father, a soldier in the 6th Cavalry Regiment, had died before meeting him. Both letters, according to investigators who later studied them, were written by the same hand, though in different styles, probably forged by someone who knew the case well. But the most baffling thing wasn't an hashtag 39, the letters. It was Kaspar himself. He couldn't hashtag 39 walk properly. He stumbled, fell, got up with difficulty. His feet were white and without calluses, the feet of someone who had never walked on hard ground. He could only say 2 phrases in German, and quote, I want to be a cavalry soldier like my father was, and quote. And in quote, I don hashtag 39 Tino dot and quote. And when given food other than dark bread and water, his only known diet, he vomited. The police captain of Nuremberg, Georg von Wessnig, took him in, tried to feed him, and ended up sending him to jail, not as a prisoner, but as the only place where there was a bed and someone to watch over him. There, over the following weeks, Kaspar began to learn. Slowly, but with an ability to absorb new information that surprised his caretakers. Within months he spoke fluently. He wrote. He painted. He described his captivity, a small dark cell, only one man who never showed him his face, black bread and water. He was never able to give more details than those. The educator Friedrich Dormer took Kaspar under his wing. And with him, the story started to grow. Kaspar was sensitive to sunlight, which hurt his eyes. He had an extraordinary memory. And one characteristic that Dormer documented, and that would generate decades of speculation, Kaspar had manners too refined for a child of humble origin. A natural bearing, a way of treating others that more than one aristocrat described as instinctively noble. Act 2. The enigma in the Germany of 1828. The Grand Duchy of Baden had a dynastic problem. Grand Duke Karl had died without legitimate children. The throne had passed to a lateral branch of the family, linked to a countess named Louise von Hochberg, known in aristocratic circles as a woman of notable ambition. A rumour circulated, undocumented but persistent, that in 1812 Grand Duchess Sepphanie, wife of Grand Duke Karl, had given birth to a male child, and that this boy, the legitimate heir to the throne of Baden, had been kidnapped at birth, replaced by a dead infant, and hidden so that Louise von Hochberg and hashtag 39's sons could reign. When Kaspar Hauser appeared in 1828, supposedly born in 1812, supposedly of mysterious origin, with manners that seemed to come from blue blood, the coincidence was too striking to ignore. King Ludwig I of Bavaria ordered Kaspar to be guarded. Count Philip von Stanhope, an eccentric English nobleman, travelled to Nuremberg to study him, ended up effectively adopting him, and took him to live in Ansbach. All of Europe speculated. Newspapers called him, and quote, the child of Europe. Victor Hugo Verlaine and later director Werner Herzog made his story into art. But then things happened that complicated everything. In October 1829, Kaspar appeared at Dormer and Handschlag 39's house with a wound on his forehead. He said a masked man had attacked him. Some believed it was proof someone wanted to silence him. Others thought he had done it himself to maintain public interest. The doubt about whether Kaspar was an impostor began to take hold. Count von Stanhope himself, who had been his protector, began to change his mind. He wrote privately that Kaspar was a liar and a charlatan, that the captivity story was an invention to attract attention. Kaspar never knew his protector had betrayed him, and before the debate could be settled, the end came. Act 3, the death on December 14th, 1833. Kaspar Hauser returned home with a knife wound in his side. He said a stranger had summoned him to the park at Ansbach Palace, handed him a bag with a note promising to reveal his origins, and that when he bent down to open it, the man stabbed him. He died 3 days later. He was, by estimate of his age, about 21 years old. The note found in the bag read, in a mirror image script difficult to decipher, and quote, Hauser will be able to tell you quite exactly who I am and where I come from. To save Hauser this trouble, I will tell you myself where I come from. I come from the Bavarian border. I will even tell you my name, ML. And quote, initials, no full name, another false lead or a real one, impossible to follow. He was buried in Ansbach. On the tombstone, someone chose an inscription that summed up everything. And quote, Hic jacet Kasparus Hauser, enigma sui temporis, ignota nativitas, occulta mors doten quot. And quote, here lies Kaspar Hauser, the riddle of his time, unknown birth, hidden death. And quote, that inscription is still accurate today. Act 4. The Diener in the years after Kaspar and Slack 39's death. The debate didn't and Slack 39 close. It complicated. In the 1990s, 2 different laboratories analysed the Diener from a bloodstain on his trousers, preserved in the Ansbach Museum. The first laboratory, in Munich, concluded that the mitochondrial Diener in the blood did not match the House of Baden. Kaspar was not the prince. The second laboratory contradicted the first. According to them, there was a close match with the Baden lineage. 2 laboratories, the same samples, opposite results. The problem, discovered later, was the sample itself. The trousers had been on display for decades, and there was evidence that at some point someone had, unquote, refreshed unquote, the bloodstain to make it look better, adding blood from a different source. The Diener in the stain was partly someone else in Handschlag 39's. In 2024, Walter Parson of the University of Innsbruck decided to start from scratch. Collaborating with him was Dr. Turi King of the University of Leicester, the same scientist who, years earlier, had led the genetic identification of Richard III beneath the Leicester parking lot. This time they didn't and Handschlag 39 to use the blood from the trousers. They used hair. Locks of Kaspar Hauser and Handschlag 39's hair preserved in museum collections, gathered at different moments, some before his death, others at the time of burial, and authenticated with a documented chain of custody. The team applied sequencing techniques originally developed to analyse DNA from Neanderthals, techniques designed to extract genetic information from extremely degraded material. And they got a clear answer. Hauser and Handschlag 39, empty DNA clearly deviated from the Baden lineage, the results rule out a maternal relationship to the House of Baden, and subsequently, the widespread and #39 Prince theory. And #39 and quat, Parson et al., iScience 2024 no match. No ambiguity. Kaspar Hauser was not from the House of Baden. He was not the kidnapped prince. The theory Europe had maintained for nearly 200 years had just been definitively ruled out. Dr. King was direct when presenting the results. The DNA said what it had to say. The stolen prince story was genetically impossible, but she added something else, which resonated just as strongly as the positive result, and quote, "However, the true identity of Kaspar Hauser remains a mystery. Quat. The 2024 DNA closed a door that had been ajar for 200 years. Kaspar Hauser was not a prince, but in closing that door, it left others completely open. Who was he really? Was his captivity story true or an elaborate invention? Why did someone stab him twice if he was simply an imposter with no political relevance? Who wrote the anonymous letters he was carrying that Monday in May 1828? And why did Count von Stanhope, who first adopted him as a son, end up convinced he was a fraud? The alternative theories are many. Some researchers believe Kaspar was a deliberate imposter, a young man of humble origin who invented the captivity story to attract the attention of a romantic era fascinated by mysteries. Others believe his story was, in essence, true, that someone really did keep him in isolation for years, though not for dynastic reasons, but for reasons that perhaps had no answer even for him. And a few still argue that the 2024 study, by relying on mitochondrial DNA, which only traces the maternal line, cannot completely rule out that Kaspar was an illegitimate son of a male member of the House of Baden, whose maternal line would have been different. Science, in this case, can close one specific hypothesis. It cannot close the whole enigma. His tombstone said it before science could confirm it. And quote, "Hic jacet Kasparus Hauser, enigma sui temporis, quat, unquote, the riddle of his time, quat." 200 years later, DNA confirmed something many had suspected. He was not who they said he was. But who he truly was, that no one still knows. And perhaps that, more than any answer, is what makes his story unlike any other. Every bloodline tells the truth, even when the truth is that the question is still open.